to the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life. My name is Kyle Case, and I'll be your host on this amazing journey as we attempt to help you get the most out of your life. Joining me in the studio today is my co-pilot, Andy Groft. Andy, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Kyle.
Awesome. It's great to be with you, as always. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
If you're a regular listener to the show, you might have heard a wrestling reference or two. Andy, I know you've heard a few of them.
Yes, because you are a big-time wrestler, Kyle.
Well, now let's not get too big time.
Okay,
but I have wrestled in the past.
Compared to me.
I have wrestled in the past, and it's been a while since I was any good at it. But it's something that I enjoy. And for the past couple of days, I've actually been involved in helping to coach a wrestling camp over at Snow Canyon High School, and it's been great. I've been there for 2 days, and today is the last day of the camp, and I've really, really enjoyed myself. It's been fun. I love to work with the kids. It's fun to see them pick up new skills and techniques. My son Christian is on the team, so it's awesome to be able to spend time with him, and it's just really been very enjoyable. And Andy, I know that you've had the opportunity to coach your son in football.
That's right. I mean, he's in high school now, so I can't, but during Little League, I coached him, and it was just a great, great opportunity. I love it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be there. You kind of catch the energy of the youth, and it's just a lot of fun. And I love to watch the kids and to really just feel their almost boundless energy, and their recovery time is pretty impressive too.
Very impressive.
It's a little different when you get a little bit older, but I talk to people all the time who tell me that they would love to participate in the Huntsman World Senior Games, but, well, I haven't competed for 20 or 30 years or whatever, so that's not really for me. That's a common theme that I hear oftentimes. But I also talk to a lot of people who were engaged in youth sports, maybe in high school, maybe even in elementary school or junior high or whatever, and then for whatever reason, life happens and they had to quit. Kids, families, jobs, maybe even health concerns get in the way of being engaged in a competition or a competitive sport. And that's normal. That's life. That's not abnormal. But let me submit a proposal to you. And that proposal is that it is never too late to recapture some of the youthful exuberance that we all had at one time. It's never too late to get back in the saddle, so to speak, and give it another go. And speaking of never too late, joining us by phone from Hollywood, California is one of our very favorites, one of our many favorites, athletes who's been engaged in the Huntsman World Senior Games for a long time, Mr. Frank Pierson. Frank, how are you doing today?
Hey, Kyle. Great to be here.
Well, thank you.
I'm doing fine.
Good. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us, and I look forward to visiting with you. Frank has been a multi-sport athlete at the Huntsman World Senior Games. He's been engaged in a number of different sports for about the last 12 years, and he's really left his mark on the games as well as the organizers and made a lot of friends and just had a lot of fun over the last more than a decade. Really, Frank's one of the most popular boys at the games, if you will. People really love Frank.
I like that boy.
And, Frank, we're going to get into some of your experiences at the games and some of the things that you've done. But before we jump into that, I want to get to know you just a little bit more and talk a little bit about maybe some of your, we were just talking about youthful exuberance. Have you always been involved in sports, even as a little kid?
Well, like you said, I've always been active, but of course I got caught up in family and jobs, and I'm a workhorse, and so, for, 20, 30, 40 years, I could hardly find time to do whatever I needed to do. But I still did it. I remember one time when I was working with Northrop, this was a long time ago, and they had this big ladder up on a hanger. It goes up clear to the top of a hanger, and just on impulse, I bet this guy next to me, hey, I'll bet I can get up there quicker than you can. So I was always working something in, no matter where I was in life. But probably 30, 40 years ago, I started realizing, hey, you got to get serious about sporting and exercise.
So I think, Frank, before we get too much further along, it's worth mentioning and noting and asking you, how old are you now, Frank?
Well, I'm a month and a half short of 90.
Wow.
So that's going to be fun.
90 years old.
I've never been 90 before, but I remember 70 and 60 and 50, and gee whiz.
Well, I'll bet you that you'll be able to do 90 just like you did some of those other ages that you remember. So, Frank,
I don't think it's going to to be too much different, just a little slower.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. And I know Frank and have known him for years, and he is absolutely active and engaged. And it doesn't surprise me at all that you bet somebody that you could climb a ladder faster than they could. That sounds just about like what I would expect from you.
That was an impulse, and this happened. I don't know why I didn't fall off there, just die from a heart attack, because I wasn't ready for it.
Well, that's it sounds like fun. And like you said, you brought up a very good point of it's just doing the little things. And even if you're not able to, compete for whatever reason, register and compete at an organized athletic event, just finding ways to keep yourself active is very important. That's really part of the active life, the name of the show. And it's really about what the Huntsman World Senior Games are about as well. Just getting yourself up and moving and engaged and doing something that keeps you active.
That's right. And, I think Frank would probably agree that choosing an organized sport like the games, knowing that you can compete competitively or recreationally, there's no stress, is really a good way to get yourself off the couch and get yourself going. Would you agree with that, Frank?
Well, of course I would. I have a mantra which I dreamed up or started thinking about 30 or 40 years ago when I started getting serious about exercise, and Huntsman certainly fits into this. The mantra evolved over years, and it's very simple. The older you get, the more exercise you need, not the other way around.
Very wise.
And so that leads into doing something every day for a sustained period of time to get your heartbeat up a little bit, get breathing a little harder, work up a little sweat, do it on a sustained basis. So when Huntsman came along, boy, I jumped on that. I don't remember how I heard about it, but it has been one of my stanchions in the last 12 or 14 years. So
Frank, you just told the audience that you're almost 90 years old, and I think most of the people at the games know you as a cyclist, although you are a multi-sport athlete. Tell us a little bit about cycling. When did you get interested in it? How old were you when you were interested? And how did that happen? Did you see a movie that...
Well, let me start from the beginning. First, I was a volleyball player, and we had played in various nationals around the country on a volleyball team, namely sponsored by the Hollywood YMCA, which many decades ago was the top place in the country for amateur volleyball. And so one thing led to another, and the Huntsman had nationals. And so we went up there, and I was on a team, and I played volleyball there for 2 or 3 years before I even got into cycling. And I don't know, I think I might have started in maybe 90, something like that. I think I was around 80 years old. And
you started
a
cycling?
neighbor of mine,
Frank, I'm sorry.
Invited me to go with him on a mountain biking thing. We'd done skiing across the Alps, and he said, "Hey, Frank, you want to go mountain biking with us?" Well, I hadn't been on a bike since I was a kid delivering newspapers. I did a lot of that when I was a kid. But so he loaned me his bike, and we went tooting off up the hills. Griffith Park is right in our backyard, so that's where we went. And I couldn't, I didn't know anything about shifting gears, and I had a hell of a time keeping up with the other guys. But that's how it all started, and I got hooked with that bike ride. And in due course, I bought a mountain bike, and I think that was 2 or 3 years after I started at Huntsman with the volleyball. And so my first year there was 3 events in mountain biking, and I just really got hooked on that. And then I think the next year I added cycling, but I only had one bike, and meanwhile the bike was wearing out because the shocks had no shocks anymore. So I was doing both of the mountain biking 3 events and the cycling 4 events by just switching tires, my fat tires to the skinny tires. I remember Ralph, your announcer, great guy, he said, "Oh, here comes Hollywood Frank on his mountain bike with no shocks and skinny tires."
That's
anyway,
great.
That's how it all started. So now after 3 or 4 years at Huntsman, now I'm in 7 events. I'm 3 mountain biking, 4 cycling, and 1 volleyball. Somewhere later on, I got into the biking leg of triathlon at least 1 year.
Now that I know from talking to you in the past, Frank, that when you went cycling with your friend that first time, when you didn't know how to shift the gears, but you got hooked, we're not talking about you were 50 or 60. That was in 2005. You were 81 years old, right?
12, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was starting all over again as a biker.
Wow, that is impressive, and I think that's a perfect example for all of us. Like I said at the beginning, that it's never too late to get out there and get something done. It's fantastic. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life, and we're visiting with Hollywood Frank Pierson, one of our multi-sport athletes at the Huntsman World Senior Games. He's been involved in volleyball. He's been involved, as he just said, in mountain biking and cycling. Frank, do you have a specific event that's your favorite? You've mentioned about 7 things that you do at the games. Is there one thing that stands out as your favorite at the Huntsman World Senior Games?
Well, I guess it's kind of where it started off. I started off with mountain biking, and I'm a kind of a mountain guy, and mountains. I love mountains. I'm not a flatlander, so that's still my favorite. But of the various parts of mountain biking, uphill and cross country and downhill, I think downhill is my favorite.
So I was just going to mention,
so much,
Frank.
But of course, it's a lot more dangerous because you're watching out for those bad patches.
Right.
But anyway, it's challenging, and I still favor my mountain bike. And I have 4 bikes now, but I really favor my mountain bike. I have a different one now than I used to have, although I have the original one. Without
the shocks.
Now I've got lots of shocks. I've got shocks on both ends. It's amazing how these modern shocks just take a lot of the bumps out of that rough world out there. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And those bad patches when you're coming downhill, they can be pretty intimidating. They're still intimidating, but I pass the law for myself. Don't fall, Frank. You can't afford to take the time to get well again. So I negotiate those bad patches pretty well these last few years.
Well, that's fantastic. I think it's worth noting for people who are maybe not familiar with mountain biking as a sport or not familiar with the mountain biking event at the Huntsman World Senior Games. As you mentioned, Frank, there are 3 elements of the sport. There's the cross country, which is basically just riding out in the beautiful kind of desert landscape that we have here in St. George. And then there's also an uphill competition where you're required to ride that mountain bike up a relatively steep hill. Wouldn't you say that it's a relatively steep hill, Frank?
Yeah, and at 90, it's getting steeper and steeper.
It gets steeper and steeper the older you get.
Still do it.
Yeah. Oh, I bet you can. I'll bet you can. And then the final event or the final part of mountain biking is, as you said, the downhill. Now, you've just mentioned that you're just about to turn 90 years old, and you're coming down a mountain on a mountain bike. How do you go about making sure that you're going to make it to the bottom? I mean, what do you do to just make sure that you're going to get to the bottom on top of your wheels, wheel side up, as they say?
Well, that comes with motor skills and experience, and you learn a lot of stuff. I didn't have any lessons on how to ride a bike. I didn't realize, for example, one simple thing about if you want to brake, if you hit something and you grab the brake, do not grab both brakes and really grab them. That means the front tire is going to stop along with the back. Well, the bike can stop, but you might go straight over the handlebars.
And that ends up being a problem.
The back end first. So that's one thing. But basically, you just learn to be cautious and to go carefully and do not exceed, stay on the edge, but be very careful when you go beyond your capabilities. But there's one bad patch, I call it the bad patch. There's several, but there's one of them maybe, 200 feet long, something like that. That's rocky, and it's still intimidating to me, but I've never fallen on that. And I guess I pass the law every year for myself, Frank.
Right.
Like, boy, don't do anything stupid. Be careful. Take it easy. Go down that as cautiously as you can and see if you can come out the other end. So far, it's worked. I have no magic answers. You just have to be careful.
You just have to be careful. And I think that that's probably good advice regardless of the sport, especially for a senior athlete. I think sometimes, and it's easy for any of us to do, but sometimes we feel like we're 16 again, and we just want to get out there and go, pell-mell, 100%, pedal to the metal. And in all actuality, we probably need to take a little more caution maybe and be a little more careful. Like you say, I think your advice is perfect. Find the edge, be right on the edge, but don't cross over so that you can maintain.
I want to add a little caveat to that last one. The last time I came down, that particular bad patch included in the downhill. The downhill's been the same for the last 3 years. I think 3 or 4 years ago, we did it over in a different spot. Now it's all been in the same place. Well, the last time I did that, I cut 2 minutes off of my downhill run, and I was a year older, so you can still improve.
Wow. That's impressive. That's impressive. So, Frank, you've obviously had a long life of activity and being engaged and as we say, really living the active life. How have you done it? I mean, how have you stayed injury free and been able to keep doing what you love to do?
Well, I seem to have some built-in intuition that I can only deteriorate so far, meaning let my body just back off from exercise, and then someday I'll wake up and I'll say, this is not working. I got to get back into it. So I never ever in the last several years let myself get too far away from being in pretty good shape. And the secret is so simple. It's just very, very simple. Every day, and of course there's some days off, but basically every day you get out there and you move around and you do what I said before. Do it for a sustained period of time, 30 minutes at least, if you possibly can do that, at least 30 minutes sustained, so you get your body really revved up a little bit. And an hour is better and 2 hours better than that. So if you do that, and then the rest of the stuff is very straightforward. You sleep well, you eat well, you work hard, do great work, find a good mate, and have a lot of friends, and you have a good life.
It's interesting. You mentioned friends. I'm sure, this was Andy again, in your life, Frank, you've had some friends that have chosen to be active, and maybe some other friends that chose not to be, or maybe were a little worried or nervous about being in athletics. And I just wonder, do you see a sort of fountain of youth when it comes to competitive sports?
Well, yes, absolutely, because at this point, I've lost in the last 3 or 4 years 3 or 4 of my very closest friends, and you hit it right on the head. They were all great guys in this case, but they were not buffs on exercise. One of them was a terrific tennis player, but he died last year. But most of my friends who have not been into exercise, they're kind of disappearing on me, and I don't think that's necessary. I really don't think that's necessary.
So Frank, what would you say to somebody who's, kind of riding that edge of, I'm getting too old, I'm getting too achy, it's getting too hard? How would you motivate someone?
You're never too old to start, and it's baby steps. Everybody's different. Don't get out there and knock yourself out. Take a little baby step in whatever thing you do. If you're really, really bad off, hydroponics is great. I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but swimming. You can do things in the pool that you can't do a lot of people can't walk very well. So they get in the pool, now they can walk great. So get in there and do it. So do whatever you have to do to get outside or inside, preferably outside, every day, and start with the baby steps and just slowly increase it. I would say something I've learned for sure. It's very important that you do something which in principle you like to do. If I had kids all over again, I would make sure that I exposed them to every sport in the world, knowing very well that only a handful of them would stick. They would reject most of them. But those handful that stick might stick with them for their life.
Sure.
And I repeat, it's not important what you do. You don't have to do biking. Don't have to do volleyball. Don't have to do anything. Do what you like to do, just so it puts a strain on your body, and start in an easy way. Do not say to yourself, I'm going to sit in this rocking chair. Get up, go, get out there, move around. Do that every day for a few months or a few weeks, actually, and you'll notice a fantastic difference.
You'll feel it right away. I've got a question for you too, Frank. When I get a chance to get with my grandmother and just talk, one of my favorite things to do is just ask her about how things were back in the day. And I kind of wonder that with you. You've been around for quite a while. How have you seen health and fitness change during your lifetime?
Well, it's changed a lot. It's changed radically in my lifetime. I happen to be I was born in West Virginia, so it's basically a hillbilly, but it was a marvelous, marvelous little town. And when I was a kid, there was no distractions except the movies, and I think we had a radio show in the evening that kids liked. But other than that, every kid in our block and the next block, we were out there before dusk and before dinner, after school, playing something, playing long ball or tag or you name it. But we were moving around as kids. And obviously today it's a whole different world. You seldom find any streets full of kids anymore. What they're doing is they're playing with their video or they're inside, and if they have exercise, it's some programmed exercise that their parents have asked them to stay in. I understand that the schools are cutting down on exercise programs. That's terrible.
Yeah.
So today, I'd say in the modern world, you as an individual, you have to take charge and say to yourself, since it's not built into the lifestyle as it used to be decades ago, there's nothing really built into the lifestyle today that makes you do the necessary things that keep your body active. So you have to jump on that yourself and dream up what you're going to do. I'm not saying that very well.
No, I think
it's a radically different world we live in today. And the only way you're going to make any difference is you take charge of your body, exercise some willpower, say, I'm going to do what my lifestyle does not require. It's going to make me healthy, and I'm going to get a big kick out of it and get a lot of friends out of it.
Perfect. I think you said it perfectly. It really depends on you. You have to make the conscious decision to say, hey, I'm going to take this challenge by the horns, and I'm going to defeat it, and I'm going to find something that I love, as you've mentioned, and something that I can enjoy and be engaged in for the rest of my life, and just I'm going to be the one that does it. I think that's perfect. Hey,
the Huntsman is the ice cream cone on top of all this stuff, because you don't have to be a great athlete to go to the Huntsman. All you have to do is be over 50 or whatever it is.
That's the only qualification.
And do something you like to do, and give it a shot for a year and see what happens. You're going to meet some new friends. You're going to get support no matter where you are in the running. Even if you're the last guy doing anything, you're going to have a lot of fun doing it, and a lot of people loving you for doing it.
That's great.
And you might get hooked on stuff, and then you might change your whole health pattern. I'm a huge believer in that. And I'll tell you, I'm going to give you another pitch about the Huntsman.
Please do.
You guys, I've been to a lot of nationals all over the country, and you guys are simply the best. You're the best organized. You've got the best setting. Your surrounds with all those parks, all those red rocks, that Snow Canyon State Park, I'm on immediately outside of town where I park my RV and stay there for the games. You got the Grand Canyon nearby, other parks. It's just an incredible experience. So I don't do it just for the 8 or 10 days of the Huntsman. I go up there for a month. I always build in something to do in your surrounds. Usually it's off the North Rim, hiking down the Grand Canyon, something like that. But you guys have got it all. The Huntsman is just fantastic.
Well, Frank, thank you. That really means a lot to us coming from you, and obviously we appreciate that, and frankly, we couldn't have said it better ourselves. So thank you, and thanks for being a part of it. We couldn't do what we do without great people like you. Well, Frank, that's about all the time that we have for today. So I want to thank you for spending your time with us. Don't forget to tune in next Thursday at 4:30 when we'll have a real treat. Mr. Softball Bill Given will be joining us in the studio. If you've missed any of our episodes of The Active Life, be sure to check out our podcast right from our website, www.seniorgames.net. And that's also
Thanks, Kyle, for helping me to stay healthy.
You are welcome, Frank. That's also where you find information on the website about the Huntsman World Senior Games and where you can register to be an athlete just like Frank is. If you have any questions about today's show or if you have any suggestions for future shows, why don't you send us an email at activelife@seniorgames.net. That's activelife@seniorgames.net. Everything spelled out. And a closing thought for the day in your honor, Frank. You should ride a bicycle 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should ride for an hour. So until next Thursday, stay active.
Bye, Frank.
Thanks, guys.